Welcome to our very sobering podcast on the Charlie Kirk assassination and what it actually means for the world.
I had been following him quite a lot, like a month or so prior to his shooting, and he was actually, I don't share a lot of his opinions. I found that some of the things he said was really good, and some of the things I quite strongly disagree with.
Of course, just to give a bit more background, got James to facilitate some questions. James, in fact, having grown up with his three other brothers, his twin brother Edward, William, and Josiah, all of them we've aimed to teach them unprogrammed. And James was involved at age 16. He's been learning business and this kind of stuff since young, and basically was one of the main ones involved in launching the Global Wealth Club at basically around age 15, 16. So you can say he's got a fair bit of experience with life. And although he's 21 years of age, he has a lot of experience. And he's come out with some stuff that's got me thinking and made me realize about the divide between the older and the younger generation. For me, it's always critical thinking is one of the most important skills that one needs to have. I can understand why someone would shoot at Trump or Kamala Harris or Biden, even though I don't obviously endorse or condone it, because they've got the ability to destroy people's lives. It's just like a normal guy who's a normal activist just gets shot because people don't like his opinion. And once you start to get that, you've really, basically it means for all intents and purposes, free speech is over.
So as far as it would go, I think on one end of the spectrum you have freedom, and on the other side you have safety and stability.
And I sat there just with my mouth dropping, like people who are like, we don't believe in the death penalty, for example, like some leftist who says, we do not believe in the death penalty. We think all life is sacred. And you're like, yes, this guy's gone. He got karma for him.
People can take things on TikTok and Instagram and all of these social media platforms, and they'll put the 10-second snippet of his videos and of what he's saying, and people will see something like that, and they look at something from social media that was 10 seconds, and then they'll say that he doesn't believe in empathy.
It really hit me like, my gosh, because it was a bit of a weird thing for me. His videos started popping up in my feed. It's always a hard one, but I think it really shows how morally we've collapsed and spiritually. That's what it shows me, that we really have in a pretty bad state when this kind of stuff, and people can gloat. Because like in the Roman Empire 2,000 years ago, Christ was basically crucified. People were cheering him on. And I sat there and I thought, have we actually even changed? We just simply gone all the way backwards? Because for me, we've lived in an era of unprecedented good fortune in a way. By and large, it's convinced me that Australia's heading down a very dark path, and financially, and economically. And now, because once the country's morals collapse, as the Roman Empire showed, that's always the really big reason it eventually collapses, because it collapses morally from within.
So I think that they prioritize things like that over morality and what's actually right. So something like the shooting of Charlie Kirk, I noticed that a lot of my friends or people at my peer group, a lot of them say stuff like that. They either turn a blind eye, so they say, oh, this is just politics. It happens all the time anyway.
But 30 or 40 years ago, you could be on a shitty income in a shitty job and you could buy a house. I can remember when I was young, I literally was able to buy 2 houses on a shitty income in a low-paying job. I think the government that promises a universal basic income and socialism is going to get in. In the Bible, they used to reset the economy. And of course, right now, we'll say we don't want the economy reset because we want to keep our wealth and our status quo.
It's psychologically, I think it's human nature to deflect responsibility and try to pick the easiest targets or pick the first thing you can blame. So I think that you have the two clashes and conflicts that are brewing between them, and instead of trying to actually understand the other perspective, then the youth are crying out just for socialism, and the older generation are crying out for free speech and freedom and for less tax and all that.
What was Charlie Kirk doing wrong? He was going around to universities or college campuses and talking to young people and getting young people interested and involved in politics. What the left don't realise is that at some point they're going to be on the right of the more radical parts of their party, and then they're going to be turned on.
I think that when you see this going on, people endorsing it, you're not that far off from civil unrest and civil war.
Like, we talk about this concept of freedom of speech, but who actually defines what's allowed and what's not? And I think something like this, clearly, there's a lot of grey areas who actually lets us say what we want to say and what can't we say.
One of the other things that he talked about was that some gun deaths are inevitable, and it's a price you pay for the Second Amendment, which is the right to bear arms in the United States. He made the point that following that logic, you should ban motor vehicles because far more people die in motor vehicle crashes in the United States than die of gun deaths.
But if I use sympathy and compassion, then that can drive more understanding for it.
Look, I think it's a very manipulative game, politics, and especially in the United States where the media likes to hype things up to such a big degree. So I'm either a race traitor or I'm a white supremacist. Now, why? Because I don't think that it's reasonable for white people in Australia or the UK or the United States to be systematically disadvantaged because of the colour of their skin, right? And when Jackson Brown was asked, what is a woman? And she couldn't answer that question. And all of a sudden, it's ridiculous.
Free speech means that people can say things that you don't agree with. But the other choice is you do what's happening in Russia and China. Like Russia now, I found out yesterday that you cannot call outside on Russia for WhatsApp or Telegram because Putin decided that he didn't trust the Western thing. So in Russia now, if you want to call out, you've got to use the Max app, which is completely monitored by the Russian state.
So he was debanked. What the hell is that? And that's the sort of thing that I think you'll start to see happening here in Australia. You're debanked. Today, you need 3 to 5 times your annual income as a deposit on a house. So it's becoming substantially harder for young people. But I believe that's caused by poor government policy, not because of the supporting of wealth by the boomers. The big corporations are getting away with whatever they want to get away with. And people are fighting with each other over stuff which is nonsense.
We said, oh, no, you don't have to get vaccinated, but you can't go to the pub. You can't go this. You can't go visit Aunt Mary. You can't go to the brothel. You can't go to you can buy alcohol, that's fine, but you can't go and go to church. And you can't do this. But if you get vaccinated, we will reward you as a good person. Just be a fucking parent and monitor your kid's internet if you've got a problem. And yet we're saying, no, we need this to protect our kids. But effectively, if you've got no livelihood and no freedom, life isn't all that fun. That's potentially where this could go.
Even if what you said was true, or even if what you said was just an opinion, like if you said, hey, I think the Australian banking sector is not as secure as it used to be, because that has the potential to disturb the economic security of Australia, they could have those sorts of posts removed, or you could be fined or misinformation out of it. Now, who the hell is the government to tell people that? So I pretty much resent being told what to do and what not to do by government. How long is it going to be before banks start to say, look, you've been going to the pub too often. You've been going to buy too many cigarettes. So if the government needs to boost economic activity, they can say, hey, look, the $5,000 you've got in your bank account, if you don't spend it by such and such a date, it'll have no value. That's the sort of power that government wants. And I think it's a big FU to the rest of us. It's about scaring you. I turn around and say, what do you mean by somebody being right-wing? What are we talking about? And what do we mean when we say that somebody's left-wing? Really what we're talking about is the extremes. And for some reason, what we refer to as the woke left, the extremely woke people on the left, they're the ones that seem to be sucking out all the air. The division that's actually happening, I think, is drummed up by the media. And it's because people genuinely don't realise what's actually being said by the other side. Look, I think it's very interesting that he had those 7,000 students in the auditorium, and him and Laura Ingram from Fox News jumped up on stage, and much of the conversation was about Jeffrey Epstein. And then all of a sudden, Charlie Kirk just backed off the Epstein thing. How are we supposed to know from this country what's going on the other side of the world?
Do I think this is Australia when I'm living in now as the one I once lived in? No, I do not. Do I feel completely safe like I used to? Not at the level I used to feel.
So there's been a 50% increase in membership and followers to Turning Point UK. There's been a doubling of the followers to Turning Point Australia. So if the left thinks that this is the way to win the fight, it's not. All you've done is you've incentivized people to come across.
Oh, his wife made it. I love what his wife said. She said the cries of his widow will echo as a battle cry. And I remember thinking, what a great way and a mature way to face it.
Those values have been fought for many generations before us to give us the freedoms that are now being stolen from us, and we should fight to keep them.